and welcome to the Wandering Creatives Podcast. I'm your host, Allie, and joining me on today's episode is Kelly Phillips. Thanks so much for joining me.
I am so excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
We've been trying to get you on the pod for a while.
I know. I'm so glad we finally made it happen. So many things that go on in life, right?
It is insane. You don't think you're busy, and then suddenly you try to schedule something and you can't for months. So I'm so pumped to have you on today's episode and really cannot wait to hear more about your journey. And you are a serial entrepreneur and have had a variety of different careers and have worked in the corporate world and in the entrepreneurial world. And I guess, like, if I were to really break it down simply, which I guess if I were to describe everything you do in maybe one sentence, it would be that your focus is to help businesses effectively communicate their idea to their intended audiences. But you also are a creative and have an amazing paper bead jewelry making business, which is freaking awesome.
Oh, thank you. And it lets me practice what I preach, right?
Yeah. Well, and I just can't, I don't understand how you make these things because they're so amazing.
I wish more people did. It's a very small niche, but you don't need a huge niche to create a profitable business.
Yeah, it really blows my mind because when you look at it, you can't tell that they're made of paper, really.
No, you can't.
That boggles my brain. Like, my brain is like, no, it's paper. But is it?
I know. That's the joy of it.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. But anyways, I'll stop talking because I could go on forever, and I will. That's why I have a podcast. But Kelly, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, how'd you get started on your entrepreneurial journey?
Sure. Well, like you said, it has been kind of a long and varied journey for sure. But I started out thinking I was going to be in corporate and be in corporate forever and, work my way up the ladder. I'm a Gen Xer, so that's what we do. We think that, we start at the bottom of the ladder and we work our way up the ladder, and somebody eventually will give us what we're due because we worked hard. Yeah. And then all of us Gen Xers at some point went, wait a minute, that's not really how this works.
Nope.
Like, I worked my butt off in corporate and I'm not getting my due. And I probably never will because these baby boomers are never retiring because they can't afford to.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, that was an awful realization. Luckily, though, I realized it pretty early, but with a bang, because when I was in my mid 30s, I was in such a toxic work environment, and it was awful. Like, I literally had a person who was targeting me and my employees. And I want to say this to anybody who's ever had that happen, because a lot of us have, at least, and then maybe I'm talking to women. I don't want to be sexist, but I think it's something that women do to each other a lot. Maybe men just handle it differently. I don't know. But if you've been in a position where you feel like you're being targeted, but then you're also doubting yourself and you're like, wait, maybe it's me. Maybe it's something I did. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I just was mean and I didn't realize it. And that created this person to act this way towards me. No, it wasn't you. I'm just telling you right now. Blanket, it wasn't you. Right? When you get in that, and so many of us have been in that situation, and it's yes. Like people don't want to talk about it because they're afraid they're to blame. Mm-hmm. We do that a lot to ourselves. We do that with, the Me Too movement, and even with this ton of toxic work environment. When you have somebody you don't get along with who makes your life a living hell, we tend to pull it internally. And so I had that situation in 2010. I was 35 years old. And I let it get so bad, I had a stress heart attack.
Jesus.
And almost died.
Oh my gosh. In your 30s. That blows my mind. But also, I feel like I was on that same path. So I can totally understand.
Yeah. And here's what happens. Just because I've run into so many people, women in particular, but this happens to men too, but what you don't recognize it for what it is. Because what will happen is, if you've been under a lot of stress, either all of a sudden or for a long period of time, adrenaline builds up in your bloodstream and it hits this tipping point, and it will bind to the walls of your heart and literally shut your heart down. And that is what a stress heart attack is. It's called Takotsubo syndrome. It's like TAKOT SUBO, something like that, if you want to look it up. And it's happening to younger and younger women who are in these stressful positions where like maybe, you're in a toxic work environment, or you're trying to be a mom in a toxic work environment, or you're trying to take care of parents and kids in a toxic work, like we're just trying to do everything.
Too much.
Yeah. And we can't, or maybe we can, but we'll die for it. And I'm sorry, but work is not worth dying over, in my opinion.
God, no, especially when you're working for somebody else.
I know.
Definitely not worth it.
No, it's not. It's not. So, and then here's the interesting thing. So I've probably run into a few situations like this over my career, but I've always managed to, get out of them or not let them turn into something that was that bad. And this final one just did me in. And I have since, because the corporate training world in the city that I live in it's pretty big, but it's also like we all know each other, or a lot of us do. I've run into several other people who also had run-ins with the same person who gave me the heart attack.
Oh.
And it's a repeating pattern.
So it is a toxic individual.
It is a toxic individual.
Lovely.
Yes. So like I said, if you're in a situation like that, it is so your morale, it affects you emotionally, it affects you physically. Please get out of that situation. That's one of my big messages to people, because it's not you. It really isn't. And you will have lasting scars from it. Trust me, emotional.
Yeah. And I think people forget that like you are given time off to take time off. Like there's a lot of guilt associated with that, especially in today's culture. Like I'm going to take sick leave, but I'll be at my phone. So if you need anything, reach out to me. But
and the other thing is when you're in a toxic environment and you take time off, you're wondering if you're getting stabbed in the back the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't really enjoy your time off because you're wondering what you're going to deal with when you get back.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely did not, I don't think, ever have a stress heart attack, but I had panic attacks to the point where I would have chest pains and had a full mental breakdown.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily because it was like a toxic environment in the way that yours was, but it was just an extremely stressful environment. Mm-hmm. And taking time off wasn't like an option. So it was just like go in a very stressful environment because it was disaster recovery related type work. And that was my point when I decided I was like, okay, I got to quit this job, get a new job for like a year, and then start my own business. But it's crazy how we, like, our bodies are literally like, we cannot do this any longer.
Yeah, your body will tell you. It will shut you down.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of you. I'm glad that you listened to it before you got to that point, because while quitting your job and changing paths can be so difficult, it's nowhere near as difficult as dying or having permanent physical injury because of the stress.
That's the thing that I found really interesting. Like I had all this physical pain and I thought it was from, like old sports injury or because I have arthritis and stuff like that. But when my stress level went down, my pain levels went down. Like the back pain that I had had for like 10 years was suddenly like not there anymore.
Oh yeah. Yeah, your body, man,
insane.
Your body will take that brain and take it for a ride and be like, no, you will stop.
Yeah, it's, oh my
listen
Lord.
to me, So yeah, so that was in 2010. And that's when I said, you know what? And I had a 10-month-old son. So I was like, gosh. I cannot do this anymore. I can't do this. And so it was a huge emotional shift for me to go from I'm corporate, I'm going to be the global director of training at these pharmaceutical companies, because that's where that was my goal, to I'm going to be by myself working out of my house, making money. And it was terrifying. Like to not have a paycheck coming in, it was terrifying to not, because as unsteady as having a job is, especially now, this was in 2010, which was a little bit of a different world than we have now. We have this illusion in our heads that having a job is secure.
Yeah.
And if we learned anything in 2020, it was that no job is secure. That you just don't know what's going to happen. But back in 2010, I feel so blessed to have a partner, my husband, who was 100% supportive of me. And, we had a lot of long talks about how I was going to do this because I was the main breadwinner at the time. and I couldn't just walk away. Like we couldn't afford to do that. We would have lost everything. And so we talked about, what do we do? Do we downsize? Like, how do we make this work? And agreed upon a number that I needed to make. And then I had to figure out how to do it with, I've always been a little entrepreneurial with little side things to make money, like crafts or, whatever, but I had to figure this out and I was scared to death. So
did you have any idea like of what you wanted to do, or did you just like kind of try a variety of things until you found the things that worked for you?
So, that's a great question, because I think everybody thinks that you have to have this one passion and turn it into a business. And I fell into that trap for a long time, trying to figure out my passion. And frankly, I don't have one passion. I'm good at a lot of things and I get bored very easily.
Yeah. I hear you.
Working by myself can be very boring, So, you get shiny object syndrome. But what I've learned, and this was a big struggle over the years, but just to make the story shorter, what I learned is that not only do you not have to have just one thing, but you shouldn't have just one thing. That having multiple streams of income is the key to that stability we're all looking for. But it took me a while to get there. And when I first was like, how do I leave corporate? Because that's one of the big things everybody wants to know. Okay, I'm stuck here. I have to make so much money. How do I even make that leap? Like, it's so scary. How do you do it? So for me, I found a skill that I had that was the most lucrative and took the least amount of money to start, which was web design. And I wasn't even very good at it when I first started, you guys. I learned as I went. And I also had some insecurities. I had a fear of charging people what I was worth, which a lot of us deal with.
Yes.
So I started out charging basically $25 an hour for web design. And I started doing that and it actually went really well. I took a class, and I'm not necessarily recommending this class for anybody because, again, we're in a different world now than we were back then. But in 2011, I took my bonus from my job that year, $2,000, and I bought a class called B School from Marie Forleo. And it still exists out there. You can still buy it. But I just have to say that at the time, all the knowledge about how to build an online business was not out there for free. Nobody really knew how to do it. Whereas now, 10 years later, there's a lot of very, very free knowledge and common knowledge. So I don't know that I would make the decision to buy a $2,000 course, any $2,000 course today in today's world. But at the time, that's what I had to do to get the knowledge I needed. And sure enough, I made that money back before the end of the course, which was, I think it was 6 weeks or 8 weeks at the time. So I think the lesson there is that when you don't know how to do it, you just have to learn. You just have to sort of like dive in and learn. I spent a lot of time, and I had to learn this lesson 2 or 3 times throughout my entrepreneurial journey, that you're never going to decide what you want to do as a business or really anything until you actually start doing it. I spent probably a year and a half. So I got burned out on web design after about 4 years, and I wanted to do something else. I wasn't satisfied. I was frustrated with my business, and I was doing great. I was making the money I need to. I had people working for me, but I wasn't happy. And so I spent probably 2 years really soul searching, like, what is my passion? I don't have a passion. Oh my gosh. I don't know what to do. I don't know what my passion is. And I tried a few different things and none of it worked. And none of it, everything was exciting for a few months, and then none of it made me happy until I finally realized what you and I talked about a few minutes ago, which is you don't have to have a passion. That's not it. That's not what this is about. This isn't about taking your passion and monetizing it. This is about building a stable income so that you have time to live your life and do the things you love to do. And whether the things you love to do are the thing that makes you money is not important. What's important is you're building a life that allows you to live the way that makes you happy.
I think that is such a good, I do get my thoughts together there. That is amazing advice. I recently had a conversation with someone else where we discussed like having to niche down, right? And I think a lot of us go into like starting our own businesses. Oh, I have to find my niche. I got to do this one thing. I got to be really good at it. I got to know who my people are, what my audience is, and focus on that. And the way you explain it, of like, you may have many niches under different passions that build that stable income in a variety of ways. And that's okay. Like, I can say, yeah, okay, so podcast coaching. That's my niche, or, but that's just one thing that I'm passionate about. It doesn't mean that podcast coaching is the only thing that I need to be doing to make money. And so I think the way you've explained it really like clicked in my brain just now. Because I always think about that when people are like, you got to niche down. I'm like, but I can't. I have so many things that I love and that I'm interested in. And how do I make it into like one business under like one umbrella? And the truth is you don't have to.
No, I think there are some nuggets of wisdom in the niching down in this way. Okay. So when you're talking about the different things that you do, being really clear on your niche within those things is going to save you time and money, because understanding, so like we'll use me for an example, because that's what I know best, my paper bead group. And by the way, let me say what paper beading is for people who don't know, because it is a very small niche. You basically cut strips of paper, and depending on the shape and thickness of the paper and all that, you roll it on this tool that I make. You roll it and then you coat it with like a hardener, and it turns into a bead. And then you can make jewelry or crafts or whatever. I recently made like a Christmas garland, a wreath. There's all kinds of things. So I make the tool. I know, right? I make the tool that helps you make really pretty beads. It helps you roll it steady and evenly. Okay. So that is paper beading is a very small niche in the craft world. Crafting is like billions of dollars a year, the craft industry, right? Yeah. My little tiny corner of it is so small. Like it's one of the smallest corners, but it's a opportunity when I looked at, what I was going to do. And I made this tool for myself first, and then realized that other people probably needed it. And I didn't invent it, but I like made better widgets, so to speak. What I realized is, okay, this is a very small niche, but there's opportunity. At the time, there were only 2 other people focusing, maybe 3, 2.5, let's say, on the paper bead niche on YouTube. The tools that you could buy, I had trouble finding the tool that I wanted, which is why I ended up making it myself and then selling it. But now, I think that taking all of my marketing background and focusing on that tiny little niche, it has grown. And now there are a bunch of people making this tool and selling it. There's other YouTube channels that have started that were inspired by me. But I love that, because to me, it's such a small niche. It has so much room to grow. Yes, they're competition, but they are helping to grow. They're bringing more people into the niche so that we can all succeed together.
Yeah, it's more exposure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I niched down there, but then let's go over, that's not the only way I make money. Honestly, that business does not pay all of my bills at this point. It will eventually. It's doing pretty well, but I have to have other streams of income. And honestly, even if it blew up, I still would want other streams of income because of what we talked about, how the world is today, needing those streams of income to create a stable financial background. So I do other things. So I consult. I was corporate trainer for 20 years. I've done everything there is to do in corporate training, from stand-up training to programming and designing e-learning. And so that is a very marketable skill for a freelancer. So I take on a few times a year, I'll take on some consulting gigs where I create online training for people. And that actually is very lucrative. I can make, let's just say that per hour, I probably make twice what I was making in corporate for that gig. Now, I wouldn't want to do it full time anymore because it doesn't bring me the joy that some of this other stuff does.
Yeah.
But when I don't do it, I miss it. It's a skill that I'm proud of. I worked long and hard to develop it. And so I want to continue to use it. I just don't want to use it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. E-learning, building online trainings. Oh, I got to give you praise for enjoying that. A lot of people don't.
It's especially when you're doing it for someone else and you're not in control of the content. It's not the joy bringing that it should be when you're creating your own. But it's very lucrative. And then teaching, I love to teach. And so here's an example. I like to use this in my classes that I teach. I use this as an example of what manifesting is. Do you ever do manifesting, Allie?
I don't, but I keep stumbling upon things. I'm like, maybe I got to start doing this because it looks like it works.
So here's the thing. I struggled with the concept of manifesting for years and years because I'm like, this is so cool. I can just think about it and it'll come true. Right. And I'm like, but that's not really how this works. That's not how life works. You don't just wish for something and it comes true. If that were the case, my life would look way different than it does today. so I was always like attracted to the concept of manifesting, but so skeptical at the same time. Like, okay, I don't get it. I don't get this. But I think I've sort of figured it out over the past couple of years. What I learned is this: when you really narrow down and you figure out what makes you happy, with what's going to make you happy, like in terms of how you live your life. Okay. And then you start coordinating your thoughts and your actions toward bringing that life to fruition. It starts to feel like magic. It starts to happen for you and it feels like magic. I think one of the big mistakes a lot of us make on this kind of a journey is we are so focused on, I have to find a passion and make that work, or I have to make X amount of money, which is good to know how much you need to make, but that shouldn't be also your focus. Once I said, okay, you know what? Here's what makes me happy. What makes me happy is that if I want to sleep in the morning, I can sleep in. If I want to go on a field trip with my son, I can go and not have to ask permission to live my life from a boss. You know, if I want to not work and run to the store in the middle of the day, I can do that. So to me, it boiled down to like, it's really freedom and control are the two key words that I use. All right. So let me give you an example of manifesting and how it will show up in your life once you start coordinating kind of your thoughts and actions together for that clear result. So once I decided that, you know, that this was the route, that the paper beading, you know, I had those tools for like 3 years on Amazon before I ever did anything with that business. I was making a few $1,000s a year. And for some reason I was like, I don't know, I just didn't want that to be my business. I like doing paper beads, you know, but I don't know what my resistance was, but even me after 10 years being an entrepreneur had a resistance to it. But I finally said, you know what, why am I not doing this? This is a lot of fun. I love doing it. This needs to be my business. So I got that going and the teaching side. And I was doing a lot of the multiple income stream stuff. Well, a friend of mine invited me to speak at a class of his at one of the community colleges called How to Make Money When You Don't Have a Job. And the community colleges in North Carolina share the different classes, right? So he invited me in as a guest speaker and had a great time. And that's actually where I first put the income wheel down on paper. Because as I was going to talk to those students, I was like, how do I explain how I bring these multiple streams in without going crazy? And so that's really the birth of that visual. So we're walking out after the class and he says to me, you know, you live over near Johnson Community College. You should pitch this class to them. And I'm like, okay, that's a great idea. So I did. I found somebody I knew. I didn't really have any ties. I had spoken at a couple student groups, but found somebody there that I knew, told me who to email. I cold emailed them and pitched the class. And it worked. I mean, I had to go through a lot of hoops to get hired and all that stuff, had to go through the interview process and things, and got hired to teach that class. So here I am, you know, I've got the paper bead rollers. I've got this one class I'm teaching, got awesome feedback from my first couple classes. Next thing I know, they asked me to take another class and another class. And that turned into me teaching job search classes in conjunction with the college and our local employment office. So then I have 3 classes that I teach that way. Then it turned into the senior director of communications at the college suddenly left and they needed a fill-in person while they did like a massive search. And they asked me to fill in. So then I had a contract, one of the full-time contracts that I do, and got to do that. Well, that then led into being asked to teach curriculum classes. So do you see how once you start really focusing on like, this is how I want to live. Like I want to teach classes, but I don't want to necessarily teach them full time. I want to be involved in academia to satisfy that training side of me. It's like every step I take leads to more opportunity. And I manifested this income stream and this opportunity through being really clear on what I wanted and then taking step after step after step in the right direction. And it feels, you know, here I am 2 years later, it feels like magic. It feels like I sometimes wake up in the morning. Well, really, I take my son to school and then I come home and then I look around my house and I'm like, I cannot believe this is the life I live. Like I found one time in a stack of papers back in 2010, you know, when I was first on my entrepreneurial journey, one of the advice that I got was to sit down and free write. And free write, what do you wish your day was like? What is an ideal day? What are you trying to accomplish? Well, I wrote that out and then I lost it, right? I forgot all about it. And I found it maybe last year or so. I found it and I didn't even remember writing it at the time. And I read it and darned if it isn't my exact life right now. Exactly my life.
That's amazing.
I know. And so to me, that's really, if you want manifesting in a nutshell, it's not about putting random wishes out into the universe, as some people describe it. It's about coordinating your thoughts and actions toward an end goal of the life you want. And then being really aware of the opportunities that show up for you and acting on them. Manifesting doesn't absolve you of the responsibility, right?
Yeah.
The requirement is for you to hone in, I guess.
No, I think that's a great way. That helps me understand it a lot better, like the coordinating your thoughts and actions and then being aware of what's happening around you. And it kind of creates like a snowball effect of sorts where you're just like, right place, right time.
That's exactly it. You said it perfectly.
That definitely is like a easier way, at least for my brain, to compute it.
Yeah. And it'll feel like magic. And there's sometimes, Allie, I sit here and I think I am so lucky. In 2010, I never thought I would be able to work for myself and have the freedom that I have today. And sometimes I'll catch myself thinking, gosh, I'm so lucky. And then I stop myself and be like, no, there's no luck to this. This is because you did the right things. Own it, girl. You made the right
steps,
decision.
Right time.
Yeah. And it's one decision at a time. So don't beat yourself up. If you make the wrong decision, I've made plenty of wrong decisions, but I've made enough right decisions that it's landed me where I want to go.
That is perfect. One decision at a time, one step. What is the saying? What is it? Some progress is, what is it? Small steps. What am I trying to say here?
Done is better than perfect.
I'm trying to use that a lot. What is it? It's like some progress is still progress, I guess. I don't know.
It is. Well, and the other thing is you need to know how to fail. I think there's an epidemic among our young people right now who are in their 20s. They don't know how to fail. Failure is not a dirty word. I'm sorry. I failed so many times, but the traditional, definition of failure. But I told my son the other day, he started a YouTube channel. He's 12. And he started a YouTube channel and he'd gotten pretty good. He got like 50 some followers because it's gaming, it's hard to get followers with gaming, and he's 12, and then he quit doing it for a while. And I said, do you think you failed? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, you haven't failed. He's like, why not? I said, because at any moment you can go up there and you can turn on that live stream. And until the possibility of you turning on that live stream and building that channel is gone, there's no failure. And he was like, oh, and you know what? 2 days later, he live streamed.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Kelly, the amount of just knowledge you have is insane.
It's all hard won and done by experience.
So I have a question, because this is a problem I have. And, I'll use myself as an example. I'm sure other people struggle with this as well, but sometimes I feel like I have too many passions or too many things that I'm trying to do at once. And then I'm scattered and I'm working on 6 different things, trying to set up a YouTube, but also trying to get a blog going while doing my drop shipping and all that other, all the stuff that is out there. And so I guess my question is how do you manage that? Or how do you, because you do a lot of different things. And so how do you do it personally? And then also what advice do you have for folks that do have all these things that you're trying to get kind of stood up?
That's a great question. Okay. So here's the way I think about it anyway. And there's probably multiple ways, but once you nail down the type of life, your day-to-day that makes you happy, what it is that's important to you, that's going to make you happy, you'll find that the things you choose to do are less important than the results that you get from them. So if you're sitting here, you're like, okay, I got 10 things I'm trying to do. I got art that I'm making and selling. I've got podcast coaching. I've got drop shipping. I've got, whatever else it is that you have on your list. And you're like, okay, I cannot do all of these 10 things. It's too much work. It's too much stress, whatever. You go back to whatever those words are. For me, freedom and control. Okay, I'm trying to accomplish in my life that I have freedom to arrange my life how I want, and that I can control, in that, yes, I'm going to have to work a certain percentage of time, but I'm going to be able to control how I do that, where I do that, when I do that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Which of these 10 things that I'm trying to do right now fit in with that vision of freedom and control? Are there any that don't? If there are any that don't, you have to cut them loose. And that can be hard because you've invested in those things, right? You've spent time building it. But if it doesn't contribute to your ultimate life that you want, you have to cut it loose. And that is hard to do. It really is. And that's where the manifesting starts to happen, because once you say, okay, is every action I'm taking every day somehow contributing to those key words in that life, the freedom and control for me that I want to build? Is everything that I'm doing contributing to that? And if the answer is yes, then magic is going to start to happen. It may take a week. It may take a month for the magic to happen, but it will quickly kick in, where all of a sudden, when everything you do and every thought you have contributes to your ultimate happiness, the happiness will just come. Opportunities will come. It'll feel like magic. Things will just show up for you that you didn't realize, were there. But it's not magic. Manifesting is not magic. Manifesting is you, your brain, and your actions working together in concert to achieve the life you want. Mm-hmm. And it becomes effortless once you start to do this and you practice it. So the structure, I think that structure issue is big. Like for those of us who work on our own, there's no structure. I end up getting
so bad.
I get distracted, and next thing I know, the whole day's gone. It's okay to do that once in a while, but if you're doing it so much, you're not being productive. That's where you have to stop. And I'm not a list person, but when I find I'm being unproductive too many days in a row, I'll stop and I'll create a list. Mm-hmm. And then I'll look at the list and go, okay, what's on this list that's not important that needs to go? And what's on this list that needs done? And I'll even separate it out into things like, okay, here's the crap I have to do that I don't really like to do, like laundry, like these are things I have to do just to live. Mm-hmm. And so this goes on one list. And then the stuff to build my business goes on another list. And then the stuff that really brings me joy goes on another list. So like crocheting brings me a lot of joy. That, might be on my third list. And then I'll do what's called the Pomodoro technique. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but you can Google it. Okay, you can Google it. There's information everywhere. Basically, what it boils down to is you set a timer, and I like to do 30 minutes. I think originally it's 15 or 20 in the original thing, but I like to do 30. For 30 minutes, I set my timer and I pick one thing to accomplish or one thing to focus on for that 30 minutes. So if I'm really off track, I'll have my 3 lists, my kind of like household list, my business list, and then my joy list. I'll start out 30 minutes. I'll do one chore on the household. And at the end of that 30 minutes, when my phone timer goes off, whether I'm done or not, I stop, I leave it right where it is. And then I reset the timer for 30 minutes and I pick something off the business list. I do that for 30 minutes. When the timer goes off, whether I'm done or not, it's now joy time. And I can spend 30 minutes doing whatever I want. That could be crocheting. It could be taking a nap. It could be taking a walk. It could be whatever brings me joy. And so I'll spend my entire day doing 30-minute increments, hopping from list to list. And all it takes is one day doing that. And all of a sudden my productivity is back.
So I've heard of people doing that before, but I don't think I've heard of it called the same
Pomodoro,
thing.
Like the tomato. Yeah. Like Pomodoro sauce.
But I kind of do that unintentionally. Well, no, I do it intentionally, but not with like a timer. Like I'll be like, I have to finish this one thing. And then I get a reward. And that reward is like lay in my bed and watch TikTok for 30 minutes. And then I have to get up and do something else and go on from there. But I had a follow-up question about, we were talking about, if you have too many things to do, and if it's not contributing to the way you want to live, then maybe it's time to like cut ties with it. And my follow-up question is, I guess I know there are no rules really, right? But for folks that are maybe like just getting started, and are setting up various revenue streams, should they try it for 6 months, a year, and then be like, you know what, like this is making me income, this is not, I should cut it. Do you know what I mean? Like, is there, I don't know, a time frame to kind of try things out before calling it quits?
That's a great question. There isn't. There's like no magic time frame, but here's my litmus test. When I'm doing something and it's not working, I get frustrated, right? And I'm like, oh, like for example, sometimes I'll put out a sale. Like I'll come up with this great idea that I think is so cool and I'll put it out there as a sale and I get like one sale. And I should get like 50, right?
Yeah,
and I get one. And I'm like, okay, that didn't work. Before I consider it a failure, I sit there and say, okay, did you really do everything you can possibly do to make this work? And usually the answer is no. So in this particular example that I'm thinking of, like I put this sale out there that I thought was really cool. And like one person bought the thing. And I was like, okay, well that failed. And then I was like, wait a minute, what else could I do? So, I put out the sale, I put a graphic, I put it on my email. What else can I do? I'm like, well, I have a YouTube channel with, 6,000 followers. I should put it on my community page. So I uploaded the graphic to my community page. Well, I didn't put it on Instagram either because I don't do Instagram a whole lot. Like, let me just throw it on Instagram. Why don't you do a little demo video with this product that you put on sale? Okay, I'll do a demo of it. Like, is there any possible thing else I could do to try to make this sale work before I throw in the towel?
Yeah.
And so usually when I can do that, there's always stuff that I didn't think of that I could do. And when I finally can sit there, and this has actually never happened, I've never sat there and said, okay, I'm completely out of ideas. There's nothing else I can do to make this work. And it still hasn't worked. Now, usually like in that case, I did all these extra little things and most of them took me 5 minutes to do. And I generated sales. It wasn't like a home run hit sale. I didn't make tons of money, but I did make it to where at least it wasn't a waste of time.
Yeah.
And I learned not to do that again. Don't do that kind of sale anymore. So, I think if you're at the point where you're going to give up on something or you're just trying to decide if you want to give up on something, sit and say, is there anything else I could do that could make this work? But then there's a follow-up question, which is, okay, if I have these 3 things I could do to make this work, do I want to do those 3 things?
Yeah.
Or do I want to walk away? Because you may want to walk away.
This episode of the Wandering Creatives podcast is sponsored by Coots Creations, branding and marketing for creatives by creatives. Coots Creations serves small businesses, entrepreneurs, and creatives throughout the country with branding, marketing, and social media management. We accomplish this by creating unique graphics, a cohesive visual brand, and content that tells your brand's story and builds trust with your customers. Visit cootscreations.com and book your free consultation today.
As you mentioned, you teach, you have a lot of different courses you teach. And one of them is how to make money when you don't have a job, which is a class that I took. Like, you're a mutual friend of the pod through Katie, who I mentioned on this podcast, but she's not been on this one yet. And so that's how I was kind of introduced to you. And then I took your class, and in the how to make money when you don't have a job class, there's a lot of focus on, again, setting up those like multiple income streams and why it's so important and how to do it. One of the things that you have in that course is the income wheel, or the income stream wheel. I think, I don't remember what the proper name is, but like, it's like I filled out that wheel multiple times, and I have it like by my desk so I can look at it and be like, okay, those are my income streams. What am I doing to like make those work? Can you explain a little bit about like the income stream wheel?
Yeah. So in the How to Make Money class, which is a class that I teach through our local community college, and it's only open to residents of North Carolina. So if you are a resident of North Carolina, you can head over to Johnson Community College. And if you are unemployed, underemployed, or laid off, you can take the class for free. So head over to the Johnson Community College website. If you are not a resident of North Carolina, I am writing a book, which hopefully will be out soon, called Income Wheel Warriors, because the income wheel is something that I created. I may have pulled inspiration from other places. It's certainly not anything like some super secret formula. It's just a structure for how to think about income streams so that you don't get so overwhelmed. But what it basically states is that it's like a pie. It's a pie chart. And you should pick three or more, but at least three main focus points. So it's kind of what we were talking about earlier when we were saying, we can't focus on one thing and you shouldn't focus on one thing. So you pick three areas to focus in. And ideally, those three areas are related, but not dependent on each other. And the reason we want them to be related is really just for ease of use. And this is why people tell you to niche down. Because if you're going to take the time and effort to develop an audience and all of the many, many tasks that you have to do to create a following for yourself, then you want to capitalize on that following. If you have three completely separate things you're doing with three completely separate audiences, then you're doing 3 times the work to develop the audience, right? So that's why niching down can be important. But for the multiple income streams, the way I like to tell people is if you can, create 3 things that draw on the same or similar audiences. For example, some people follow me because of the paper beading, but they're making their own paper bead jewelry and they want to sell it and create a business for themselves. So they are following me for both the paper beads and the business advice, right? Because most crafters want to sell their stuff because they make way too much stuff and they've already given it to everybody they can give it to. And most people don't want anymore. So, what's going to fund their hobby? So that's how those 2 pieces for me are related, but not dependent on each other. I could quit doing paper beads and still mentor business people. I could, quit mentoring business people and still do paper beads, but I can cross draw on those 2 audiences to help both of those things grow. Mm-hmm. So that's how the income wheel works. The inner circle is your kind of 3 focus areas. And then outside of that, you divide up an outer ring into, okay, what are your main ways of making money inside each of those? So for example, with paper bead rollers, I sell off my website, Amazon, and Etsy. And I have a YouTube channel, which mainly is set up to drive sales. But I also can earn some ad income from that and affiliate links. So there's multiple ways I make money from that business, not just selling products. And then for the teaching, I've got the classes that I teach, and then I'm writing this book, Income Wheel Warriors, which will be out on Amazon. I don't have a release date yet because I'm still kind of incorporating our changing environment. The job world has changed so much and the business world has changed so much with the coronavirus pandemic. So I'm still kind of tweaking the advice, but that book it's not the how to make money class in book form. It is the income stream part expanded out way beyond what I have time to teach in the class. So that book will be available in ebook and physical book format soon, hopefully by the end of the year. People can go to kellyphillips.biz if they want to sign up on a list to get notified when that book comes out.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, Kelly, I might have to have you on for another episode of the podcast just to talk business stuff. I've got questions about, recommendations or advice you have for how people can find clients based on their income streams. If you're down, I would totally love to have you on the podcast.
I'm down. So I'm glad I can share. I'm so glad that you invited me here. And yes, I'd love to come back and focus in on any of those specific areas. And
I will take you up on that. I really can't thank you enough for joining me and not only sharing just your story and your journey, but also all of the amazing information that you've shared. Listeners, if you want to get in touch with Kelly or find out more about her websites are paperbeadrollers.com, kellyphillips.biz. She also has a YouTube channel and can be found across social media. And I will, of course, put all of her information in the episode description so you can easily navigate to her various pages, hit her up with questions. I'm sure she would love them. And Kelly, again, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It was great to talk to you.
Yeah, it has been absolutely amazing having you on the podcast. And I can't wait to have you on again. I'd also like to thank the listeners for tuning in to today's episode. If you have questions, comments, thoughts for me or for one of my guests, you can text or call us on our hotline 252-419-6004, and we will answer your questions on a future episode of the podcast. Be sure to like, rate, and review. And you can follow us on Instagram at wandering_creative_ and visit our website, cootscreations.com.
This has been a Coots Creations production. Follow the show on Instagram at wandering_creative_ and on Twitter at wandering_pod. For more information, go to cootscreations.com. Like, rate, review, and subscribe. To sponsor the Wandering Creatives podcast, visit www.cootscreations.com/podcast-sponsorship-opportunities. You can also click the link in the episode description below. To be a guest or a featured maker on the podcast, click the link in our Instagram bio or contact us at cootscreationsllc@gmail.com.